Taylor Swift, obviously a big name in the public eye, right? So somebody, well, actually, there's probably been thousands of people. You can go look up AI images of nearly any celebrity that have been generated out there. There's millions of them. Yeah.
Just the time I spend an hour a day on enforcement myself, just, the Ron Coleman stuff. Yeah. So for her, it must be.
Yeah. So here's the thing is that you've got Taylor Swift, who is upset, wants to file lawsuits against people generating artificial intelligence images of her. They're not selling them. They're just out there in the internet. And one in particular several in particular were having her in some, and it's not the first time this has happened to her and a lot of other celebrities, but basically artificially generated images of her in very realistic and compromising positions with, the entire Kansas City Chiefs. So I was surprised at how real some of these things look. It's like, but okay, give me the legal kind of rundown here. Is it a matter of I can go after somebody who created these artificial images just because they created them? Or does there have to be some kind of provable financial damages from them, Ron? Where's kind of the line here? What do you do with this?
Damages isn't at all part of the calculus here. I would assume that even if a law were passed, whether in California, which would be the most likely place to pass such a law,
right,
or in Congress, it would be unconstitutional under the holding of Hustler versus Falwell.
You said unconstitutional.
Unconstitutional.
Okay.
Even though it is gross and tacky, and of course, platforms themselves can filter as appropriate, as that's a different conversation, but it can never be illegal in the United States to do these sorts of things. It's considered to be free expression.
But what if it falls under like revenge porn or certain other things? Because it's not. Because the thing with the Hustler thing is the intent, right? Like the argument was that it was parody, and I think that with Taylor's people, if they can like present an idea that even one of her fans can be confused by this into thinking it's real, I think she may have a case.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you could even look at it from the same as like being called something that you're not on the internet. Like this person had the intention to hurt you and to ruin your livelihood, kind of like what happened to me.
And well, let me tell you that we lose those cases on a regular basis, and we file them. We file them because sometimes people feel that they've got to do something. They've at least got to make some kind of statement. And I just filed one last week for a very well-known person on the internet, but he hasn't made it public yet, so I'm not going to talk about it. But we do this kind of thing, not more like the ones you're talking about, that where there's an intent to hurt your feelings, but actually in Falwell, the Supreme Court held that parodies of public figures, even those intending to cause emotional distress, are protected by the First and 14th Amendments to the U.S. Constitution. 14th meaning that would rule out both a state statute as well as a federal statute. It is just one of the costs of having the First Amendment in this country, is that people can be hurt this way. And it is distressing because you can really ruin someone's life. There's no question that you can ruin someone's life. And I do think to a large extent, one of the things that certain critics that have gotten a lot of pushback on with respect to, Nikki Haley, for example, saying, hey, where's the accountability? Maybe people should have to, should not be allowed to post things anonymously. That's never going to work. But that would be closer to working than prohibiting. And by the way, I'm not sure even if you had a law like that it wouldn't result in a phenomenal Streisand effect, where
That was the
would
same
be-
thing I think Tom said last night. Somebody brought up the Streisand effect on Flashcast, didn't they, Tom?
Yeah, I mean, I brought it up, and I think somebody else did too. And I said that's kind of the problem you have here now with the situation. But again, I mean, I'm not a lawyer like Ron, but
No one's a lawyer like Ron.
No, of course
And
not.
that's
But
a
I
good
mean,
Is the Streisand effect when the wind blows and it hits your nose and it turns
Yes.
you around?
yes, no, it's when you marry an idiot like John Peters. No, it's basically where you try to stop something from getting out in the public, and you trying to stop it from getting out in the public just makes everybody look at it even more. Basically,
So a
explaining
good
it shitty,
example
but-
of this
Yeah.
is the piano guy in the UK. Have you guys seen that?
Yeah, the
Yes.
Chinese couple.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. So they didn't want to be seen, and by going up and causing a scene, they made themselves known. So
Well, a couple of things on this, and a couple other legal questions. But Michelle, I want you to jump in here because I know you're a big Taylor Swift fan, right? So, I mean, you saw the story this week, I'm imagining, so you kind of know what's going on here. So, I mean, what was your reaction to this? I mean, think about the Swift community out there. I mean, I would think that probably you and a lot of folks out there know these images were fake as all get out.
Definitely. I knew they were fake immediately, and I knew she would despise them. Because if you know Taylor Swift well enough, you know that she has guarded her reputation very closely. Like, that is dear to her. Hence why when Kanye put out what he said in that song, her next album was literally titled Reputation. Yeah, I knew she'd be upset with it, and honestly, rightfully so.
People have been doing nude fakes since well before AI. Let's remember, well before AI, people did bad nude fakes. AI makes it possible to do much better nude fakes.
Well, exactly, and that's one of the things, Ron.
Well, and that's kind of the question, right? Like, is when we get to a point where it's indiscernible, right? And I think that's going to be the argument that Taylor's people are going to be making here on this, because, like, they're not really even talking about emotional damages or any kind of monetary damages. But, like, when this came up, I was like, yeah, Hollywood and all these other folks couldn't figure out AI or get their shit together for it, but Taylor Swift is somebody who can move mountains, right? She's the woman that took down Ticketmaster after all these years.
Yeah,
she'll win the Super Bowl, Tom.
That's the thing. Like,
single-handedly
gets interesting with this. And then there's the George Carlin case on the other end. And that's the thing. The George Carlin case, the thing they're arguing here is not even a monetary thing, even though that they could. They're arguing that the individuals involved used copyrighted stand-up material that the Carlin estate owns.
That's the difference. Yeah.
And there's other things involved here. So this is going to get dicey. And I think the big difference is yes, you can make an argument that everybody who's her fan or should know the difference. But what about a parent who doesn't, right? Who sees an image like that? And that was the other problem I brought up last night on Yellow Flash is the other problem you have is the moment you type in Taylor Swift in Google, these images now are some of the most populated images that pop up.
Oh, really?
You have a problem, right? And that's where I think
calm down, Paul.
Her people are going to have an argument with that.
Flash.
It's like, wait a minute here. We got an issue with this. It's not like it's
and honestly,
on a private platform.
If I'm being real, like, I hope she's able to win, because I get what you're saying, Ron. I don't see how that falls under free speech. Like, I'm sorry, you can say whatever you want about me, but you don't have the right to create an AI generated photo of me in the nude as a female minister, where that could, talk about defamation.
Well, this is going to face every single person in the country, though, in very short order, because artificial intelligence can now be asked to imagine what anyone looks like in any given situation.
But
in very short order, it can do that.
The size of your congregation.
That not exactly what you're wanting there, man.
Well,
no, I just think
I asked the hard questions here.
That's right.
I don't know if men can even fully get at how horrifying that idea is, like a woman like me. Like that is horrifying.
The difficulty, though, is that AI is going to be able to not do just images, but full-on videos in very short order. It probably already can, but it's going to be able to do that for anybody. And this
just did that with George Carlin. That was the whole issue with it.
Well, that was what I was saying. And Pearl, that's exactly what I was saying too last night, was like, I thought this would come to a head when we'd have like a court case where somebody actually used some kind of AI generated images, video, and or voice, and somebody either won a case or lost a case through that, or it was a criminal case, something was going to happen sooner or later, and then it would come out later that it was faked, right? Like
deep fakes.
So here's the
Deep fakes
problem.
are
See, that's the thing, is
common
we're
right
in
now.
a very muddy area here. It's
Here's
not
why
like,
this is going to be a massive brawl, and it's right here already on us. We should have brawled on this 10 years ago.
Well,
here's
yeah,
why
that's
this
what
is
I'm
so
saying,
difficult.
yeah.
It's because where is that line? Because let's say that I want to make a cartoon and I want to parody Taylor Swift. I want to make her look bad in a political cartoon. Am I allowed to use her image there, even if it makes her look poorly?
Yes.
And if I am, then what is the difference in that and being able to do that with this other thing, which many of us think is absolutely deplorable, but
I hope everyone.
it's more difficult to have the right, but it's
Yes.
more difficult to ascertain where the legal line is.
Well, that's
Well, the thing is even
as
the legal
law
line's
currently
not going to
stands.
stop it. What she'll get out of it at the end of the day is all these companies that create these AI apps will just make it to where, just like with Kathleen Kennedy and Disney and certain other things, now you just can't put it in there anymore.
See,
It's not
I
gonna
envision
stop too
I
many
envision a
people
problem
if they
of-
have like an app that's not legal, let's say. For instance.
I envision a problem of high schoolers generating every classmate they have in this same way
Yeah.
and distributing it everywhere, and everybody has been
Gonna
treated
happen.
this way.
You-
It's gonna. That's
you can't stop it. Hang on a second, because I want to get Ron to chime in
exactly
on this.
Valiant.
Yeah, you can't. It's a slippery slope. And the question is, where do you draw the line? Now, I'm going to pull up some AI generated images. They are not the explicit ones that we're talking about, but they are of Taylor Swift. And I just want to make this as a point. I've double checked. I'm looking at the screen. None of the dirty ones are in here. These are actually really good. So let me pull this up. Okay, it's like Taylor in a bikini, Taylor Swift as Belle, right there, which is I think looks amazing. But all of these images, I mean, some of these look very animated. Some of these look like they're painted. You see like some ones that got botched, because AI is not a perfect thing. You've got to teach AI what to do. Not yet, but I mean, you still have to be skilled and really teach it what to do. And it takes a lot of
I've
practice.
seen some good images.
Oh, I've
Like,
seen
that's the
some
thing.
excellent ones, but they're done by people who have spent a ton of time
And here's the thing.
training the AI. But wait, hang on. But you look at this, and this is my question for Ron. You look at these things. These are artificially generated images. They're fake, right? But what is the difference, or where do you draw the line, Ron, between this and the other stuff? And is it I got to imagine this is an incredibly legal slippery slope. And even if, and I had the thing up a moment ago, I'd have to switch back over, but even if they passed this law that they want to do, you got a congressman talking about wanting to pass this law to make, we don't know yet, illegal. You know how congressmen are. They're just going to shoot off the cuff and say, we're going to do this. Would it even stand the test against the Constitution? So where do you draw the line here, Ron?
Well, the Supreme Court has, over the last generation, drawn the line almost to a place where you can't even see it. Keep in mind, the Supreme Court has essentially said that you can produce child pornography that is entirely based on simulated, computer-generated images.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that is a gigantic, a huge change because it removes the conception of pornography as a form of speech that is not protected by the First Amendment because it is obscene.
Mm-hmm.
And that there is such a thing as obscene speech that is not protected by the First Amendment, and depends only entirely on the inability of on the issue of consent. And since children cannot give consent, that is how far out. And I'm not endorsing it. This is
no, I get it.
Not prescriptive. That's the world we're living in now. So if you can do that. And this goes to some extent, though, as we're talking, I think about your original question, Valiant, which is, well, Ron, does it make a difference if someone is making money off it? And usually in these kinds of cases, it conceptually it doesn't, but as a practical matter, it might, because certainly if you made a video game using AI, and using an AI of Taylor Swift or Valiant Renegade or any other popular sex symbol.
Yum.
you would have a claim for infringement of, in her case, for sure, she has her name and some aspects of her personality, of her persona, registered as trademarks, but also for infringement of the right of publicity, which in California is particularly well protected.
Mm-hmm.
But that screen that you threw up, of those Google images are epitomized fan art.
Right.
Fan art, there's no accountability. It tends to be anonymous. It's usually one-off. Maybe someone does a bunch of them, but they're not making money. There's no money trail. There's no paper trail. And, this is certainly not true for someone who is a minister, but someone who is an entertainer, okay? How many billions of dollars does Taylor Swift make now by virtue of her fame and her looks and her ability to make extraordinary use of the interconnected media conglomerate that has been built around her?
Mm-hmm.
Easy come, easy go. That's part of fame. That is part of the price. 75, 80 years ago, these discussions were being had, and this is well before New York Times versus Sullivan. But similar discussions were taking place about gossip columns and the Hollywood journalism and salacious tales of goings on in the studio and whatnot. And it has always been understood. It has always been understood that if you want fame, you lose privacy. And if you want the kind of fame that exists today, and the leverage that fame can have to reward a person and give a person phenomenal power and wealth, it is a little bit naive to think that it's not going to also come with a higher degree of risk to embarrassment and humiliation than might have been the case before. It's the best I can do for you.
I saw some case with regards to a politician who wanted to squash something out, and I can't remember what the judgment was, but it was along the lines that you've chosen to become famous. You are now a public figure, so all bets are off. Now I'm
to some extent. I mean, you could a public figure can be defamed, but he has to prove actual malice, which is that the defamation was done intentionally or with a reckless disregard for the truth.
So can I ask you, a non-famous person, some person living next door to someone else, but the neighbor is now really mad and then does an AI version of him humping the dog and causes reputational damage. Is that a different, because that person has never chosen to be famous?
Yeah, it
Didn't
might
have
be.
a YouTube channel.
It might be. It might very well be.
But on what grounds? Would it be
on what grounds? Because if
false representation of the event.
Remember
it would probably fall under like slander and stuff too. Yeah, but anyway, sorry, go ahead, Ryan.
If you could in fact prove that people believe that this man was really engaged in bestiality, and as a result, first of all, in most states there's something called defamation per se. Defamation per se does not require you to show damages. It merely if you are accused of certain kinds of things, one of which is sexual perversion. Now that's a little bit dated now, since sexual perversion is something we have parades for now, but and Disney, right? But for example, if you claim that a financial advisor routinely steals money from his clients, he doesn't have to prove that he lost clients in order to at least get a judgment, a nominal judgment, and possibly, in addition to the nominal judgment, punitive damages, because you are making a claim that I am unfit to perform my my profession. So, that could happen, but what's much more likely is that no one's gonna see that thing unless you make a big fuss about it. You could. Is it possible to destroy someone? I mean, we see this all the time on Facebook and in chat groups. People do destroy the lives of unknown people.
True.
With this sort of things,
but you do have to prove that there's malicious intent behind it before you can really do anything, right?
Absolutely, you do not have a public figure has to prove actual malice, but that does not mean malicious intent. It's a bad choice of words. When the Supreme Court enacted that legislation from the bench, it chose the term actual malice for probably reasons that had good, some historical basis to them, but it has nothing to do with the way you and I would use the word malice. If I am either willfully, if I defame you willfully, all right, that probably does mean malice. But if I do it with a reckless disregard for the truth, let's say I'm just a person who absolutely doesn't give a hoot about anybody else ever. I'm not malicious. I'm just an irresponsible, selfish bastard. Okay. I can satisfy the actual malice standard.
Yeah, and just to be clear for the YouTube Alex out there, I mean, nobody on this panel is suggesting that these images that were generated of Taylor Swift or anybody else are good things. They're not. No. And I mean, obviously, it's she's understandably upset about them because they go everywhere. But she's Taylor Swift. She's probably one of the most well-known people on earth. But it sounds like, Ron, if we're hearing you correctly, that legally, constitutionally, there's not a whole lot of there. I mean, as far as what can be done. Yeah.
No, there isn't. I don't think so. And I think it's a problem, and I've written about this for many years, but it is the world we're living in now.
Mm-hmm. Can I just put the problem very quickly of scalability and why I think this has impacted us so very, very quickly. Mm-hmm. In the 1950s, you could have drawn a celebrity in the nude, and you would have viewed that. Maybe your buddies would have viewed that, and that's it. And it would have probably been very crude. Today, because of technological advancements, in a few seconds, you can draw Taylor Swift in such a manner, and technology aids you in doing that to a very believable degree. Mm-hmm. And then on top of that, the scalability is that you can then immediately share it with the entire world. Mm-hmm. And our laws seem to be written for the scenario in the 1950s and are nowhere close to handling what we're in today. And so that's why we can have these situations that we probably all agree are unethical.
Yeah.
But we also probably agree that as the law stands today, don't apply.
Yeah. It's a tough one. Michelle, any thoughts on that one before we move on?
Well, I was just even thinking because Tom is so right of we're at the beginning kind of a way in this. Mm-hmm. Like this is going to get even more dangerous. And like say even things like this, say it's like talk about like an October surprise the night before an election, they get something that so is good of like Donald Trump and a kid. Or, I don't know. And my point is just like
using it for an entire presidency. God only knows. I mean,
yeah.
Well, look at those pictures that Mark Ruffalo posted for F's sake.
Yeah.
Yep. And that's just it. Here's the scary thought is that, well, okay, we figured out the problem. Congress drops an edict. Nobody can use AI except the government.
Yeah.
Right.
Or the studio.
And again, like I said, it's really, you guys are right. It's not really going to affect anything on the grand scale because what'll happen is all these companies will, and that's why it's in the news, right? And that's why you have the headlines and all that stuff. Is these companies will quickly react and they'll make it to where you can't put Taylor Swift in. Already on X, there's a problem with getting searched for Taylor Swift, for instance, and on YouTube.
Yeah.
So it'll just be limited on that for a while until they kind of diminutize it, until it goes away and dissipates or whatever. But who knows hopefully Congress doesn't do anything stupid here.
But people have been doing this with Photoshop for a long time. What's the difference?
I agree. I understand what you're saying.
I think the videos are going to be the big difference because they're going to be forthcoming. And
that's what I'm saying. When you get audio and video involved,
I think there's a fundamental change coming to society that we don't need to ignore, and that is that in the very near future, if you produce a photo, let's say in court, and you say, well, here's the evidence, then the person's going to say, so what? That's AI.
See what I mean? AI. Yeah.
Well,
I mean, we already saw
Ron's disagreeing. Ron knows better than I on this.
There is a very healthy sector of professionals who analyze physical evidence like that, and I don't think you know, I don't think you have to worry. I don't think you have to worry about that in the foreseeable future. You know, photographs almost never. I mean, photographs are very, very rarely involved. Maybe in a criminal case, but like, you know, we have video from a bank or something like that. But then there's always a chain of custody issue. So even if, you know, besides having a computer and, you know, digital media analyst take a look at any media, which it's pretty easy to tell whether it's legitimate, and at least as important is the chain of custody. So if you say, here's a picture that was taken with a cell phone of the perpetrator, when was it? You know, it's going to be time, date stamped. It's going to have, you know, they're going to. There are protocols for all kinds of evidence of this nature.
Right, and all pictures have an EXIF file attachment to it,
which you can spoof. But again, it's easy to, you know, any sophisticated analyst can. Even I could using some fairly desktop stuff, could get past that.
Make sure you're subscribed to Valiant Renegade and join us every Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern for the live show.